The Mavericks are conducting an internal investigation, which the NBA says they will monitor. But does Adam Silver and the NBA need to have their own investigation?
Yeah, I think it runs a decade long. I think Mark Cuban's a distracted owner. I think it would send a league-wide message. Listen, the NFL went out with Deflategate and Ezekiel Elliott, and they have created investigations. And those are Cowboys, Tom Brady, Patriots. I think it sends a league-wide message. The world's changed. The Mavericks are losing, Jason. Stories come out during losing streaks. What if there's multiple winning teams and you have ugly cultures of harassment? I think you send a league-wide message, and you make it very clear it can't be tolerated, and we're going all in on this.
Yeah, I think they set a standard that they're going to try to avoid, but they need to live up to with the way they handled the Donald Sterling situation. And so how can you, once you've set that standard and precedent, how can you avoid it here? To allow Mark Cuban to pay for, finance his own internal investigation seems laughable to me. And I've been someone who has always been a little bit skeptical of the pedestal we've put Adam Silver on. Oh, the players all love him and he stands for all the right things. Well, now there's a time to make some tough decisions and really go at something serious. And let's see if he can meet Roger Goodell's standard, because everybody in the media loves to beat up Roger Goodell. He can do no wrong. He can do no right. Well, let's see what Adam Silver does here. I certainly think they need their own investigation and not look the other way on this situation. It's great that, this extreme ownership that Rick Carlisle's talking about. Really? The guy's claiming he didn't know what was going on. And again, I'll say it again, a women's running club in Dallas knew about the CEO and the president, but Mark Cuban didn't. This sounds like something. Mark Cuban doesn't deserve to have oversight of this situation.
This is why I say that, for me, the NBA has to do something. And I got a quote that I wanted to pull up that kind of signifies to me what I'm talking about. And what I want to really look at is the bottom part of this, is that when he talked about what he missed, that he also talked about, I didn't do anything. This person can go out there and do damage on another woman at another time, okay? Or do I say, can I get him counseling, okay? So when he's talking about the firing of Earl Snead, he did his research back then. He did his time back then, and he still came up with this decision to keep him on staff. That's what bothers me. So when you say now that, I messed up and I overlooked, I didn't look at the police. No, because you spent time right there to analyze and conceptualize, okay, here's a man, let me see if I can give him a chance if he goes out and does this other stuff. That's what bothers me. So as it moves forward to what happened when the allegations finally came out, it's hard for you to retract and say you didn't know. Because you're on Shark Tank always criticizing or really digging into people that want to come in about you got to know your company, you got to know how to run it. You heard Rick Carlisle talking about hands-on. Mark Cuban is always there. Nothing gets by him. So you can't say you didn't know. I'm going to go back to that quote right there. The NBA does need to do an investigation because he spent time on this right here and he let it slide.
Yeah, we know he lying. First off, he knew everything about it. And that quote was perfect, a perfect example of why the NBA needs to do its own investigation. He was able to do it, see that somebody was in trouble, send them back into the workforce, but then at the same time say, yeah, I don't want him to go somewhere else, but I want him to come back in my business and do the same and have a same opportunity to do the same thing, which that doesn't make sense to me at all. It's just the league, it's not as harsh as the Donald Sterling. I wouldn't go that far because this is something that that's what Mark Cuban did, was turn a blind eye to Earl Snead. But it wasn't his actual act, like it was Donald Sterling's actual act, his voice that they heard on the phone.
But he allowed stuff to go on. That's my issue, is that he allowed Earl Snead to still be there despite what HR put together. Then you go fire Buddy Pittman, who was head of HR. You go fire him after you gave him the okay to keep him.
Yeah, that's the blind eye I'm talking about, that he turned it. But at the same, go ahead.
It's one of these things. I never let a smart person get conveniently dumb. I didn't know this was happening. So Mark Cuban's detail-oriented. Now he's conveniently sloppy. Well, I didn't give it thorough. I only had lunch with the president. No. You're hands-on guy.
Exactly.
You can't get conveniently inattentive. You're a pay attention to everything guy.
Listen, his excuse doesn't fly. If I'm Adam Silver, if I'm the other NBA owners, if I'm the media that allegedly is hyper-vigilant about these situations, but that hyper-vigilance seems to be disappearing when it's Mark Cuban, the standard, he can't just say, the fact that he said, I didn't know anything about it, that right there is the number one reason you need to investigate. Is the guy really this incompetent? And again, his excuse that he's throwing up that I didn't know, that's the number one reason why I would be out there investigating.
Snead, the reporter, who had multiple domestic abuse allegations.
Right.
It appears that Cuban allowed him to come back knowing we just can't have him in the same room with women.
Right. Now that's
I mean, I'm sorry, but like that, in what decade of my life has that been appropriate?
And the NBA definitely does need to do an investigation because I think this is the tip of the iceberg. I think it goes so deep, so much deeper than just these little incidences right here and what we know about ussery. I think that it's very important that they get to the bottom of this. And it does. Dallas Mavericks don't need to be involved. The NBA needs to involve some form of independent investigation.
You can't have 20 years of this stuff going on and it just be one or two people involved.
I agree. All right, well, some people are drawing parallels between the Mavs and the Donald Sterling scandal. Back then, Cuban was a vocal opponent of the idea of forcing Sterling to sell the team, saying, quote, what Donald said was wrong. It was abhorrent. There's no place for racism in the NBA, any business I'm associated with, and I don't want to be associated with people who have that position. But at the same time, that's a decision I make. I think you got to be very, very careful when you start making blanket statements about what people say and think as opposed to what they do. It's a very, very slippery slope. Whitlock, should Mark Cuban suffer the same fate as Sterling, have to sell his team?
And this is where Eddie and I disagree. I think this situation here is worse than the Donald Sterling situation. Donald Sterling is a blithering idiot, filled with bigoted views. Those were expressed in private with his mistress or whatever. In terms of empowering Doc Rivers, empowering Elgin Baylor, paying a team of mostly African-American players, you could put together an argument that Sterling's views, his private views, weren't impacting his actual workplace. When I look at this Mark Cuban situation, and particularly the Earl Snead situation, how is this not analogous to what we fry college coaches for? You got some five-star recruit, and you look the other way because winning was more important, and so you overlooked his sexual assault or domestic violence issues and kept him around. Mark Cuban did exactly that as it relates to Earl Snead, signs a contract or has Snead, his organization has Snead sign a contract that I won't have interactions with women one-on-one. If a college coach had a contract with a player, you'll have no contact with females on this campus, the media's head would explode and would be calling for this man to be eviscerated from the planet. So how can we not hold Cuban to that standard?
I think, first of all, GMs, coaches, players, refs make mistakes, and so do commissioners. David Stern once introduced a new ball and didn't tell the players. Owners can make mistakes, too. Okay, nobody's perfect. When the Sterling thing came out, Darnold had a 30-year reputation, even in the housing market in Los Angeles, of oppressive ownership and
housing discrimination.
Yes, housing discrimination. Okay, Mark Cuban, for at least the first part of his ownership, was considered a strong steward of the league. He was very pro-player. First guy to go private jets.
Fined more than any owner in any sport
he was
in
loud.
the history.
He was loud. Jerry Jones is loud, but he's a good owner. Jerry's a good owner. He can be loud.
He's been fined more than any owner in the history. Again, fined for tanking here recently. Fined for calling into question the integrity of the referees. At war with the commissioner, David Stern, the entire time he's owned this team.
I think what's happened with Cuban, Sterling had a 30-year poor reputation. I was not even an NBA beat reporter, and I'd heard horrible stories. Cuban, I think after his title, became an incredibly distracted owner and has become now a bad owner but I don't feel it's systematic 30 years. I think it's Shark Tank, 30 new businesses, not paying attention.
20 years of Terdema Ursary.
But here's my thing. I don't care. Think about it from the victim's perspective. It doesn't matter if it's 20 years, 1 year, 5 months, 2 days. It should have been taken care of. So even though Sterling built up this track record of over 20 years, 30 years, whatever, and I knew when I was in the league about Sterling and what you heard about his racism. Mark Cuban had a chance back then to quell this and stop it, but he allowed it to go on. Now, my thing is, once they do a thorough investigation, we get all the facts on everything, then let's determine what the penalty is as far as, does Mark have to sell the team? Let's not make a judgment right now based off what little we know.
You want due process.
I want due process and get all the information so that way now we can really evaluate, or the NBA or independent investigator can really evaluate what the penalty should be. Don't jump to conclusions because it doesn't look good right now, but I still don't think you can dismiss because Sterling had 30 and Mark might have had 7 or 8. It's still bad optics because he had a chance at the time to kind of push Earl Snead out the way, but he allowed him to stay.
And that's the mistake I think Colin was talking about. A owner, a GM, they can make a mistake, but was this a mistake that he continuously made? Now, we know what Donald Sterling does. I have personal experience. I was with the Clippers 03, 04. Now, let me tell you, we didn't have a practice facility. We practiced at Southwest. We're a league team. Southwest Junior College, right? Yep. We have no showers. So we come to practice clean, get dirty, and got to put on some clean drawers on a dirty butt. You know what I'm saying? What I'm saying? Then on top.
Let me stop you there just for a second, Eddie. Just because I don't want people to think you're analogizing putting on dirty shorts to what women face.
No, I'm not at all. What I'm saying, I'm talking about the racism of Donald Sterling, his track record, not only from the top and not only that phone call, he had been doing this to his players, is what I'm trying to say. He's treating us. We have no food after practice or before practice. We have no food on the plate. No, I'm not trying to sound like a spoiled athlete or anything. I'm just saying that you can see
you were treated well.
We were not treated well at all. That was.
My position is, though, again, those things are difficult, but they pale in comparison.
No doubt.
Into coming into a hostile work environment where the CEO is sitting down talking about you're going to get gangbanged this weekend.
And I was not comparing this to that right there. I was just giving you an example of my experience of the Donald Sterling side of it. That's another compartment that nobody else knew about. So I'm giving you guys an example of that. Now, as far as what he could have made a mistake, and this could be something that he's been covering up. And that's why, again, I agree with Jimmy. You got to do your due diligence and see what really is going on.
Mark Cuban has been the most accessible owner in the history of sports. You can send him an email and get a response within an hour. People in the media, Earl Snead got his job from emailing Donald Sterling. It's hard for me to believe with this Mark Cuban, with Ursary running around doing what he was doing, that not one woman within that organization no one emailed Mark Cuban, no one put it on his radar that things were out of control in this workplace. It's hard for me to believe that.
And if they didn't, is that telling you they didn't feel comfortable with Mark Cuban because Mark Cuban created the culture?
But they couldn't because they went through HR and got basically pushed to the side. That's what happened. They went to, and a lot of times in the workplace for women, and I've talked to a lot of women too that feel they have no voice. And this is what bothers me from that perspective. So as a parent, you tell your child, if you got a problem, you come to me, I'm gonna take care of it, okay? You come or go seek authority and make sure you tell the right people so they can take care of it. So we tell women to do that, and they go to HR, and the head of the head doesn't do anything about it. What are they supposed to do?
Right. Then they tend not to
now
come
they
back.
now I'm gonna lose my job. I'm gonna lose my career.
That's why we have whistleblower laws for employees that feel they have nowhere to go.
Right.
Could I make this argument though? With Sterling, he was directly speaking. He was directly involved in the controversy. With Cuban, he's indirectly involved.
Earl Snead is involved with Earl Snead directly.
When he gave him that job.
He got him the job.
Yep.
He was in the loop when he got in trouble. The man got arrested at their practice facility.
How you not know that? If you get arrested here, I'm gonna know. And I'm not even the boss.
And it involved
I'm gonna know the details of it.
It involved a female employee in your company. Again, this is your point about he's overseen a culture that is that toxic that the women feel like they had no place to go. I'm just sorry. this to me is worse than Donald Sterling. Donald Sterling can think a lot of, I know a lot of people that think a lot of dumb, racist stuff. People in my family, people, I've thought some dumb stuff. I know a lot of people privately that say a lot of dumb things. I don't know a lot of people that would oversee this work environment, would take this Earl Snead and make him sign a contract, don't interact with women. I don't know a lot of people that would do that. I really don't.
And nobody should come to work and be uncomfortable.
Oh,
period.
God, no.